What if a world completely different from yours needed a hero, and the only one available was an ordinary high school student who was unexpectedly trapped there? In the fantasy world of Animecapped, a modern-day teenager from Japan finds himself as the heir to a legendary power capable of altering the world's fate, with enemies from all directions and deadly threats looming. Let's begin with Erida, our hero for today, an 18-year-old high school student. His life is pretty average, almost normal. Everything seems routine until one day, we see him on his way to school. At school, Erida has only one friend, Sojo, the only person he considers a real friend. But here, we see Erida often being bullied, with no one believing in him or liking him except Sojo, whom he recently met. At school, there's one person who constantly bullies Erida, making his school life miserable. We don't know who this person is yet, but remember them, as they'll play a very important role later. In the middle of the school day, Erida overhears Sojo talking with other students, saying, "Are you kidding me? No way I'm friends with Erida. That guy acts like he's autistic, always scared of something." Erida is shocked and can't believe Sojo would say such things about him. He thought he had finally found a good friend, but now he feels betrayed and starts hating everyone, wishing they would disappear from his life. He thinks, maybe I should be the one to disappear. I don't need to exist in this world. On his way home, Erida suddenly feels something strange. He experiences a shift, as if swapping places with someone from another world. Suddenly, Erida finds himself in the middle of an unfamiliar forest. Even more disturbing, he sees strange surroundings around him. While he tries to make sense of what happened, a white-haired man on horseback approaches and says, "Where do you think you're going, Erida? You're going to die here, and no one will save you." The man attacks Erida, who is terrified and completely confused. Erida vanishes from the soldier's sight and reappears in another place. Just then, a beautiful girl jumps toward Erida and says, "Where have you been? And where did you get those strange clothes? Come quickly before someone tries to hurt you." Erida asks, "Who are you? And how do you know my name?" The girl replies, "What's wrong with you? I'm Shudo. Did you fall and hit your head or something? Come on, let's go to Grandma's house before anyone attacks us." Erida follows her, feeling slightly relieved. When they arrive at Grandma's house, Shudo talks with her grandmother and says, the princess has been killed, and the kingdom is blaming Erida for it. Her grandmother is shocked, and Shudo continues. Erida also seems to have lost his memory and is acting strangely. Erida interrupts, saying, "I haven't lost my memory, and I'm not the person you think I am." Shudo responds, "See, Grandma, he's been acting strange ever since he came out of Kindo Forest." Hearing the forest name, Grandma is surprised and says, "Come with me, child, and tell me everything that happened." Erida starts explaining, saying, "Look, Grandma, my name is Erida. I'm from Japan, and I have no idea what's going on here." Grandma responds, "Strange, you look exactly like my grandson, Erida. There's a legend about Kindo Forest, a place that can transfer those who enter it and change their behavior when they come out." Erida says, "So, what does this have to do with me, and why did I switch places with a criminal?" One day, a woman deeply loved her husband, but when an issue arose with her grandson, she told her husband not to speak ill of him. She firmly believed in her grandson and was sure he would never do anything wrong. Meanwhile, our protagonist feels utterly confused, not understanding why all of this is happening to him, as if everyone has betrayed him and no one truly cares for him. He reflects on the chaos in his life. As the protagonist speaks with the woman, suddenly, a commotion is heard from outside. The woman rushes out, telling the protagonist to stay inside. Outside, a white-haired man who previously attacked Erida appears, threatening a young woman named Shudo. He warns Erida, saying if he doesn't come out, he'll kill Shudo and the old woman. The man introduces himself as Kenji. The protagonist feels in his heart that he has nothing to do with any of this and should stay in his place. However, he hears Kenji shouting at Shudo, demanding that he reveal Arata's location or die for a criminal. Shudo firmly responds that Erida is not a criminal and that he is willing to sacrifice his life because he believes in Erida. Hearing that someone has such faith in him, the protagonist finally steps out of hiding and confronts Kenji. He says, "Leave him alone. I may have nothing to do with this world and don't understand what you all want, but I can't stand by and let a good person die in front of me without doing anything." Kenji scoffs, accusing him of using something to bolster his courage, and then orders his men to attack Erida. In the battle, Erida finds an ancient sword nearby and manages to wield it. Kenji tells him that it is a valuable weapon that not everyone can use, but surprisingly, it responds well in Arata's hands. Erida successfully defends himself and avoids danger. Amidst the chaos, their grandmother's house collapses, leaving their fate unknown. Back in Arata's original world, his mother and sister are seen searching for him in the streets. They come across someone who resembles their son, Erida, who turns out to be the other Erida who has replaced the protagonist. They bring him home, Meanwhile, in the protagonist's world, Kenji finds no one after the house collapses. It turns out they have managed to escape and are hiding in a cave. The grandmother explains to Erida that the weapon he possesses is very powerful, and he's fortunate to have it. Erida begins to wonder if someone else has taken his place in the original world. Shudo decides to bring him food and urges him to eat because he looks hungry. However, Erida refuses and says he wants to go out for some fresh air. When he steps outside, he realizes this world has 4 moons. If we see 3, it means the 4th is himself as the observer, says the narrator. Elsewhere, Kenji, now at headquarters, meets someone named Akashi, a high-ranking figure who orders Kenji to capture the protagonist alive and bring him to public trial. Kenji accepts the order. Meanwhile, Erida, still feeling down, is approached by Shudo, who brings him food. Shudo encourages him to try the food and says it used to be his favorite. Erida thanks him but refuses, saying he has no appetite. Shudo assures him that his memories will return and that he'll be back to his old self. Erida responds that he is actually from another world, but Shudo counters, asking how he could use the ancient weapon so effortlessly if he weren't from this world. Confused, Erida says it might just be a coincidence. Shudo embraces him and says, "I will always believe in you, no matter what you say. I will never leave you. Oh, by the way, where's the necklace I once gave you? It seems you lost it, and that's going to be trouble for me," says Shudo, who can only fall silent, not knowing how to answer. Shudo then says, "Anyway, don't worry. Take this and keep it safe. Don't lose it, as it's very precious to me. Now let's eat." At that moment, Erida begins to eat and surprisingly enjoys the food. In the midst of this moment, Kenji suddenly appears, holding an elderly woman. Yes, Kenji has found their hiding place and forces Erida to surrender to prevent the elderly woman from getting hurt. Unfortunately, Erida complies with the demand so that no one else will be harmed because of him. As Erida fears what will happen to him, a strange portal suddenly opens, revealing Erada's room. At the same time, the second Erida also sees the portal. Erida attempts to enter it but fails. Then the second Erida speaks to him and asks, "What brings you to my room?" Erida replies, "Believe me, I don't know. Maybe because you swap places with me." After a moment, Erida asks, "Why did you kill the princess?" However, the second Erida responds, "What? I didn't kill her. It was Kenji. He collaborated with other kings to overthrow the princess, so one of them could take the throne. After committing the crime, they framed me, even though I could never have killed the princess because she was a fair and just leader." Erida began to feel relieved and trusted the words of the second Erida, although he still didn't understand many things. The second Erida said, "I'm sorry for what happened to you and for making you take my place." Erida replied, "It's okay, my friend. You must have felt anxious too, not knowing how to interact with the people in your world." As they spoke, the doors started to close, and Erida saw his mother knocking. He wished he could see her, but unfortunately, he didn't get the chance. Erida was then taken to the capital to be tried there. Shudo and his grandmother were safe, staying in a village. However, the focus shifted back to Erada's trial. Kenji said, "You have committed a terrible crime by killing our beautiful princess, Katori. I want everyone here to see this," he said, showing the princess's body surrounded by magical charms. Kenji explained that the princess wasn't fully dead because, before passing, she cast a spell to protect herself, though her life was now hanging by a thread. At that moment, everyone began to curse Erida, questioning how he could do something so heartless. Erida answered, "I am not guilty. Kenji committed this crime to incite a battle for the throne and allow a new ruler to take control of this world." Kenji scolded Erida, saying, "You fool, never accuse us." Then someone named Akashi appeared at the trial. He told Erida, "You have committed a crime and will face punishment. We won't kill you. Instead, we'll send you to the worst prison in the world, Gata prison." With a heavy heart, Erida was taken by plane to the prison. On the way, he felt anxious about what awaited him there. A guard approached him along with Shudo, who had secretly snuck onto the plane to join him. Because of this, Shudo would also be imprisoned in Gata prison with him. Shocked by Shudo's actions, Erida asked, "Why did you do this?" Shudo replied, "Have you forgotten? Didn't I say I would always be by your side and wouldn't leave you alone? Oh, and I brought your old bag and weapons so you can use them." Shudo had hidden these items in a suspicious place. But let's focus on the important part. Our hero felt a bit relieved seeing this girl and attempted to use his weapon to escape from the plane. Unfortunately, the weapon didn't work with Erida until suddenly, a chain given to him by Shudo activated with a sword, and out of nowhere, Erida and Shudo found themselves in the sky. They suddenly saw Princess Katori, who was supposedly betrayed, appear before them. She said to our hero, "Finally, I can speak with you, Erida, because there is something I want to ask you, something only you can do." Erida replied, "A request for me?" She answered, "Yes, I don't have much time left and am close to death. This spell allowed me to speak with you. You, Erida, are the most suitable person to take my place and lead this world. So I ask you, Erida, to use your weapon to stop this war and become a leader for our people." Our hero replied, "I'm sorry, but I can't do that. I don't have enough power to do something like that." The princess said, "I'm sorry, I can't talk much longer as this drains my energy. But I trust you, Erida, and I know you will change many things." Then everything returned to normal, and Erida and Shudo were back on the plane. Erida then asked, "Can I really change the world?" Shudo replied, "Of course you can. Even the princess believes in you, and that's significant. I believe in you too, and I'll support whatever you want to do. Oh, and hide your weapon so it doesn't cause trouble when we enter the prison." Erida asked, "How should I do that?" Shudo took our hero's hand and hid the weapon within his body. Erida wanted to scream, but Shudo said, "Don't be soft. It doesn't hurt at all. Don't worry. Anyone with a legacy weapon can do it." Joking around, they finally arrived at Gata prison, a grim place with no sign of hope. Upon entering, they saw other prisoners, and it was clear that Arata's reputation had preceded him. All the prisoners knew he was the one who killed the princess, so no one wanted to associate with him. Suddenly, two young boys approached, intending to kill our hero, believing he was responsible for the princess's death. One of them attacked him, managing to injure him. The boy taunted Erida, "How can someone as weak as you have killed the princess?" But before he could continue, an earthquake shook the prison, and everyone began running like mad as the prison's guardian monster, who required two people as a daily sacrifice, approached. A woman in prison named O approaches Erida and explains her situation. She also gives him a hair clip as a token. Erida then pulls Shudo aside, trying to keep them as far from the other inmates as possible. Shudo tends to his wounds, and our hero starts to think that this girl has helped him a lot, and he should thank her. Just as Erida is about to thank Shudo, the ground suddenly collapses and Shudo falls. Unfortunately, our hero doesn't manage to save her in time. He begins to search desperately throughout the prison until he encounters Sue, a girl he met before. Sue asks, "Why do you look so panicked?" Our hero replies, "Have you seen the girl who was with me?" Sue answers, "I know where she is, but as usual, there's a price for everything." Erida offers his bag, the most valuable thing he owns. Sue says, "All right, the girl with you was captured by two brothers, one of whom already tried to kill you when you arrived in prison." She points him to their location and refuses to take his bag. Sue says, "Go on. What are you waiting for? Go!" Erida thanks her and really heads toward the two men. Meanwhile, we see that the two brothers are treating Shoto well. They like her and want to get to know her. The two men are named Jinshur and Kanta. Jinshur tells Kanta that he'll go get food for them, and he really leaves, leaving Kanta alone with Shoto. We see that the young man is very shy and doesn't know how to start a conversation with her, so he decides to look for Jinshur because he's taking too long. However, as he starts looking for his friend, he finds him lying near our hero. Kanta begins to attack our hero, but Erida manages to fend off his assault. Jinshur tells Kanta to stop attacking the man because, in fact, he saved him from a group of people who were after him. Those people had stolen a ring that was very important to Jinshur. Kanta says, "All right, stay here with this good guy, and I'll deal with this and be back soon." Jinshur brings Erida to where Shoto is and assures him they haven't done anything bad. Shoto begins to tend to his wounds, and Jinshur apologizes to our hero, saying, "Forgive me, but Kanta and I have always been more than friends, always supporting each other. The ring they took was very precious to me because it's the only thing I have left from my mother." As they speak, Kanta comes in and successfully retrieves the ring. But Kanta still wants to fight Erida to test his skills. However, before he can, the prison guards drag him away in a terrifying manner. Our hero nearly suffers the same fate, but Jinshur pushes him back, taking his place. Erida can't believe what's happening and says he must save the boys. Shoto asks how he'll do that, and Erida replies, "I don't know, but I'll find that prison guard and try to locate him by any means necessary." Shoto responds, "All right, I'll be with you no matter what." We then return to the two brothers, who are now bound by the prison guard, who says to them, "Hello, little criminals. Let me introduce myself. I am Suji, the supervisor and warden of this prison." We only hear his voice, but we return to Erida and Shoto, who are searching for the warden's location. They then encounter a girl named Osu, who says to our hero, "Good, you found your girl, but wait a moment, where are you going?" Erida says they're looking for Suji, and she immediately gets angry, saying, "You fool. How could you want to do something like that?" Erida replies, "Because I have to save those two brothers. I could have been in their place right now." He then thanks Osu for all the information she provided. Osu says, "You're impressive, Erida. So take this as well, a hair tie I took from your girl. Erida continued on his journey until he finally arrived at the place where the two brothers were. However, he was shocked to see them attacking each other. It turned out that Suji had told them that only the one who killed his brother would survive. Kanta immediately attacked Jinshur without hesitation. In the middle of the battle, Jinshur remembered the first time he met Kanta. At that time, Jinshur was lost, and no one knew where he came from, but Kanta approached him and treated him with kindness and friendship, like an older brother. Surprisingly, Kanta pretended to lose by collapsing to the ground. Our hero did not stand by and watch this. He started attacking the chains that bound the guard. The situation was very difficult for Erida, who held on until the last moment. But just as he was about to lose, he saw Shoto, who continued to support him, and our hero said that he had to survive so as not to leave this girl in danger. Finally, he was able to activate his ancient weapon, which allowed him to defeat Suji's guard with full skill. At that moment, we learned that Kinji was on the move and was heading toward Gatha prison, where our hero was. The monsters there scattered when they saw the radiance of our hero's power, as he had just escaped from the prison. Then, Erida delivered a final blow to the monster, revealing the true form of Tsug, who turned out to be an old man with a large black sword embedded in his body. Our hero attempted to pull out the sword, and at that moment, he could see Tsug's past, where he was betrayed by a friend who tried to kill him. Tsug lost control of himself at that time, and hatred consumed him, which eventually turned him into the guard of Jado prison to punish all wrongdoers. When Erida saw Tsug's past, he felt sympathy, understanding the feeling of betrayal. While everyone urged Erida to finish off Tsug, our hero refused to do so and tried to free Tsug from the hatred and resentment that had taken over him. However, this was difficult for Erida, as the hatred tried to tempt him into becoming evil. But our hero resisted, saying he would not allow anger and hatred to control him. In the end, Erida managed to pull out the sword, leaving Tsug in shock. Tsug asked him why he did it, and Erida replied that he could have ended up like Tsug and saw him as a victim. Even if it might look foolish to Tsug, he chose not to kill him. Tsug then said he was very proud of Erida and considered him an extraordinary figure worthy of being a follower. Then Tsug and his weapon merged with Erada's ancient sword, meaning Tsug now lived within our hero's weapon, significantly enhancing Erada's strength. After that, all the prisoners that Tsug had devoured turned out to be alive. Tsug hadn't killed them, but had only imprisoned them separately from the other detainees. Jado prison eventually disappeared, and the island returned to normal. At that moment, Kinji arrived and asked what had happened, and one of the prisoners began to explain to him. Meanwhile, Erida and his friend took a boat from the island to escape before Kinji arrived. On the boat, Tsug spoke to Erida from within the sword, telling him that he was the one who would rule the world with his magical sword. This excited Erida for the adventures ahead. Then, we shift to another Erida, who replaced our hero's position, and his family thought he had lost his memory. They treated him in a relaxed way until his memory returned. This other Erida felt bored, but he complied and made his family feel at ease. Returning to our hero, their boat was nearly sinking, so they landed on a nearby shore. Erida explained his story to his friends to help them understand him better. They then united and set a goal to go to the imperial capital to meet the princess before she passed away. As they explored the place they had landed, they saw smoke in the distance. When they went to see what was happening, they found a group of people camping. It turned out that they were villagers from Jinshur's hometown, and Jinshur was shocked to see his mother, whom he had not known the whereabouts of for many years. His mother cried with joy because her son had returned. We know that the villagers are preparing to go to the border area, as it is considered a safe place with a looming great war over the throne. The villagers will pass through a cave with a waterfall that opens only once a month, and they must cross to the other side before the waterfall closes again. However, when Jinshur is about to cross the cave, we see that his friend Kanta does not want to go with him, and before the waterfall closes, his father, Jinshur, begins showing affection toward his son. Jinshur then saves Kanta, who continues to cry and does not understand why his friend is acting this way. Our hero asks Kanta, "Why are you leaving your friend?" Kanta responds that his friend has found his mother and believes he will be safe with her. He also says they should continue their journey and leave him behind. But Erida says, "All right then, since you didn't go with them, join me on my journey to the capital. At least you'll be of use to me." As the trio of friends is walking, they see a dinosaur-like monster ahead of them, and our hero is frightened by the creature's appearance. But Shudo says, "Don't be afraid, Erida. That creature is not dangerous." Unfortunately, the monster begins to chase them and almost attacks them until they manage to escape. Then they see a young girl holding the monster's egg, which turned out to be the reason for its anger. As the monster approaches, they see that the girl is a servant of someone named Ohi, a king who rules a village. The girl stole the monster's egg to give it to Ohi's wife, who was pregnant and about to give birth. Ohi's wife believes that if she eats the egg, her child will be born healthy and strong. As the girl talks to Erida and Shudo, the egg hatches, and a small monster comes out, meaning it can no longer be eaten. Suddenly, Kana enters, but he is behind someone who turns out to be Ohi, the man the servant girl was talking about. Before Erida has a chance to speak to him, he faints from exhaustion. Then we shift to our hero's original world, specifically to Arata's school, where the students notice that Erida has been absent for a long time. Back to our hero, who wakes up from his faint. Kana says to him, "Finally, you're awake. Listen to me now. I know that the man named Ohi is actually Kenji's right-hand man. I don't want him to know that you're the Erida they think killed the princess, to avoid causing trouble." Kana continues, "That man has been very kind to us. Look, you're even sleeping in his bed." Our hero replies, "Don't worry, Kana, everything is under control." Just then, Ohi enters and introduces himself to Erida. He says, "Come, my friend, let me show you my village." Before we continue with him, we shift to Kenji, who receives news from one of his soldiers that someone has killed many of his men. He immediately goes and finds his men dead and covered in blood. One of them informs him that it was Akashi who did it, leaving Kenji shocked and in disbelief that Akashi would betray him and do that to his soldiers. Kenji prepares himself, as Akashi is now heading to Ohi's village to kill him as well. Kenji orders his men to prepare because they are going to Ohi's village. Back to Erida, who is walking with Ohi, our hero asks his opinion on the impending war for the throne. Ohi replies, "To be honest, I am disappointed and don't want people to come to this point." Kana asks, "Will you also join this war?" Ohi answers, "No, I only want to protect my wife and the child she is about to bear and ensure my village lacks nothing." Erida begins to be impressed by this man's character until Ohi says, "Wait a minute, Erida. Your name is the same as the one accused of killing the princess." Hearing this, Arata's heart races, but Ohi reassures him, saying, "Don't worry, your secret is safe. I won't harm you, because I can see in your eyes that you are innocent and did nothing wrong." Before Ohi could finish her conversation with our heroes, she was suddenly informed that an important guest had arrived unexpectedly and wished to see her. She apologized to our heroes and went to see who the guest was. However, before leaving, she met with her servant and asked for help, saying, "I want you to hide our guest because the person who has arrived seems suspicious." Then, she proceeded toward the guest, who turned out to be Akashi, a demon with a terrifying face. Akashi asked her, "Hey, Ohi, what is your purpose in coming so suddenly like this?" Akashi replied, "Listen, my friend, I've come to tell you the full truth. That boy, Kenji, who works with you, he's the one who planned this whole conspiracy and killed the princess. He did all of this so he could become the new king. So, what do you think, Ohi? I want you to join me with my sword, so we can defeat Kenji and restore everything to how it was before." At that moment, we see that Ohi does not trust him and feels that Akashi is a sly figure whose true goal is to use her to seize the throne. In fact, this is the truth that will gradually be revealed in this story. Ohi answered him, "I don't trust you, and besides, I can't betray Kenji because he is my right hand." Akashi then replied, "Very well, you're forcing me to do this." Akashi threatened Ohi, saying he would kill her wife if she didn't listen to him and join him in battle. Unfortunately, Ohi found herself trapped in this situation and felt she had no other choice but to obey Akashi. She said to him, "I will follow your orders, but on the condition that you do not harm my wife or the child she is carrying, and do not approach my guests." Akashi agreed to this. Sadly, Ohi did indeed join Akashi's forces. And not only that, we also see Akashi kill Ohi's pregnant wife in a bloody and horrifying scene that is hard to believe. When Akashi was about to attack our hidden heroes, Kenji suddenly arrived at the arena. At that moment, Akashi said, "Oh, Kenji, you've finally come, boy." Kenji looked at Ohi's wife's body and asked, "Why did you do this? Why kill innocent people who had nothing to do with this?" Akashi replied, Kenji, we are already at war, and the slogan of war is the strongest survive." Kenji didn't let Akashi speak any further and attacked him immediately. A fierce battle ensued between them, strong enough to destroy the arena itself. This was the greatest fight we had seen in the anime so far. After blow, kicks left and right, we see Akashi trick Kenji and steal his weapon. However, even without his weapon, Kenji didn't give up and continued to fight. Unfortunately, he lost, and Akashi continued to taunt and humiliate him. At that moment, Erida, another character, felt enraged and said, "What is your goal? That you would kill innocent people without reason? You even killed a child who wasn't even born yet. I truly don't understand you and don't even want to understand you. But what I do know is that you are now my enemy." Akashi replied, "Don't pretend to be a hero, because you'll regret it later." Then, OHI's servant approached Kenji and asked, "Are you going to bring OHI back?" Kenji replied, "Unfortunately, I can't do that, because once someone joins another's weapon, they can't return." The servant wept, and Kenji looked troubled, wanting to leave our heroes behind. But Erida stopped him and said, "Are you just going to leave without saying anything? You are the cause of all of this from the beginning, from when you stabbed the princess. You are also responsible for the death of the good man named OHI, he and his wife. I once worked with him, and he was a very good person who didn't want to abandon his work with you until the very end. Now you come to me and want to leave without saying anything, as if nothing happened." Kenji finally became angry and said, "What do you know about me to speak like that? I have only one goal that has brought me this far, and that goal, my friends, we will understand later." Kenji then left them, and as night fell, Erida sat with his friend Shudo and the young boy, Kanta, who said that our hero wanted to seek revenge on Akashi by any means necessary. Yet he remained seated in fear of Akashi's power, feeling he wasn't capable of killing someone easily, as things seem to happen in this world. Kanta mocked him and said, "You need to be braver and understand that sacrifices are sometimes necessary to ensure a peaceful life for you and the people you love. So be a real man and fight for your life to the end, until every bone in your body is broken." Those words greatly affected Erida. Shudo also added, "Yes, don't be afraid. You have the strongest ancient weapon that can allow you to rule the world." Our hero looked at his sword and set his ultimate goal to take revenge on Akashi. We see that his weapon is deeply influenced by his emotions, emitting a glow due to the power he holds within. Let's leave our hero for a moment and turn to the other Erida, who sneaks off to school without his family's knowledge. There he encounters the bully I mentioned before, who will play an important role in the beginning of the story. At school, he encountered a bully who was mentioned earlier to play an important role at the beginning of the story. Erida spoke to the bully, "Hey bro, do you know someone named Erida?" Then, the bully, whom we know as Shadow, replied, "Are you here to joke around or what?" Then, the second Erata's mother appeared and asked, "Why did you leave the house? If you wanted to go to school, you should have greeted your teachers first since you haven't seen them in a long time." We saw Shadow stand, giving Erida a harsh punishment for speaking too casually to him. Erida finally greeted the teachers and began to explore the school until he met two people who said, "Let's go to the rooftop now. Shadow wants to see you." Erida agreed and went up to the rooftop. Up there, he didn't pay much attention to Shadow and started enjoying the view of the school. Shadow said to him, "Have you lost your mind? Or what are you doing?" Erida replied, "Who are you exactly? Why are you treating me like this? Are you Arata's friend or something else?" Shadow was furious, shocked that Erida dared to act that way in front of him. The second Erida, growing bored, tried to leave, but Shadow shouted, "Are you crazy, trying to leave while we're talking?" Erida turned back and saw Shadow ready to attack him. So he kicked Shadow to the ground and said, "I don't know what happened between you and Erida, but I won't let you disrespect him." We return to our hero, who was walking with Kanta and Shudo until Shudo fell and sprained her ankle, making it difficult to walk. Kanta said there was a nearby cabin where they could rest, and they went there. As viewers, we notice that Kenji is watching them with hidden intentions. But now we follow our hero, where Kanta says he'll look for herbs to treat Shudo's injury. Erida thanked him, and Kanta left. When Erida sat with Shudo, he noticed Shudo blushing in his presence, making Erida uncomfortable, so he pretended to step outside for fresh air. Our hero thought to himself that he couldn't let Shudo fall for him or truly love him, as in the end, he wasn't the same person who had grown up with her. As Erida wandered, suddenly his necklace started emitting the same signal as the other Arata's necklace, and we saw a portal open, like what had happened before. Our hero began speaking with the other Erida and asked, "What is your relationship with Sho?" Erida replied honestly, "I'm not entirely sure, but he's like a brother to me, so you must take good care of him and not lose him." Our hero felt happy hearing that, and promised he would protect Shudo. Meanwhile, we saw Kana finally find the herb he was looking for, but it was in the middle of a certain graveyard. When he picked up the herb, we saw lava erupt from the ground, and there was a big secret behind this place that we'd soon uncover. Then, we returned to our hero, who was told by Erida that he went to school and hit someone there. Our hero said, "What? Are you crazy? Why did you do that?" Erida replied casually, "He started it." Then our hero asked who he had hit, and Erida told him it was a student named Shadow. As soon as our hero heard the name Shadow, he froze in place, unable to speak. Erida asked, "Why do you look so shocked? Isn't that kid your friend?" Our hero recalled his past, remembering that Shadow was once his good friend in his early school days. But something happened that changed everything. As the portal closed, our hero was shaken by the news about Shadow and was on his way to Shudo. Suddenly, Kenji appeared from behind, wanting to seize his weapon. We see that the same lava that appeared where Kanta was also appears at our hero's location. Kenji seems highly adept at controlling fire, as his powers are indeed fire-based. He speaks to Erida and says, "This lava only appears occasionally due to the volcano, so be careful because the fire here can burn anyone." Erida, confused, asks, "What do you want?" Kinji replies, "Hand over your weapon, and I won't kill you." Our hero begins to tremble in fear, and Kinji mocks him. "Look at you, trembling and clueless." In a matter of seconds, Kinji snatches Arata's weapon and nearly kills him. But suddenly, Shudo shouts from afar, pleading with Kinji not to kill Erida. At that moment, a large fire surrounds Shudo, putting her in great danger. The scene reminds Kinji of someone very precious to him who also faced a similar situation, leading to their death. Without a second thought, our hero runs towards Shudo without a weapon, plunging into the fire without a hint of hesitation. While the fire scorches our hero, Kinji finally rescues both of them and throws Arata's weapon to the ground. Kinji begins to recall his past. We learn that he once worked in the Imperial Palace alongside a group of servants and guards. One day, two people came to work at the palace, Akashi, whom we know, and a girl named Aimi. Days passed peacefully, and Akashi had a very strong bond with Kinji, like siblings. We also see that Kinji was interested in Aimi and waited for the right moment to express his feelings to her. However, tragically, one day turned into a nightmare when the people began to rebel against the emperor and kill anyone who worked at the palace. At the time, Kinji, Aimi, and Akashi were together and were nearly able to escape. But with numerous enemies pursuing them, Akashi decided to fight the pursuers, allowing Kinji and Aimi to continue their journey. Now, we return to the present, where Kinji is feeling the pain while reminiscing about these past memories. He begins to tell his story to our heroes so they understand what happened in his past. We find out that after Kinji and Aimi fled the empire, they never heard any news about Akashi. Because of this, they tried to live a simple life, far from the chaos of the war around them. However, one day, Kinji was gravely ill and close to death. That day, Aimi decided to go search for medicinal herbs to help Kinji. As she went to look for the herbs, Kinji opened his eyes and saw a terrifying scene where Aimi was surrounded by a great fire. Even though he was weak, Kinji still wanted to help her. Unfortunately, Kinji was attacked and unable to protect himself, let alone help Aimi. In the end, Aimi perished, her body disappearing in the flames. At that moment, Kinji lost hope, having lost two of the people dearest to him. He felt a strong desire to end his life. But suddenly, Aimi appeared in the form of a weapon made of fire. This power was eventually accepted by Kinji, who agreed to live alongside the weapon. If you remember, this is the same weapon that Akashi took from him when Kinji lost in their battle. You might be surprised to know that Aimi's grave is in the same place where Kinji used to look for medicinal herbs. This is where Kinji's character starts to open up, and we learn that his goal now is to defeat Akashi and reclaim his weapon. At this moment, Erida has a question in his mind about what might have changed Akashi after they parted ways, but he chooses not to ask and doesn't bring it up. Instead, Erida offers Kinji to join his team, saying, "Look, Kinji, I want to change this world and make it a place worth living for everyone. What do you say about joining me in this dream?" Kinji, surprised by Arata's personality, finally agrees. Not long after, Kinji adapts to Arata's team, though his demeanor remains arrogant. They start to create a good atmosphere together. We see Kinji training hard with Kanta to be prepared for the challenges ahead. Now we shift to another world, where Erida often comes home late from school, worrying his father. Erida, not fully understanding the situation, tries to avoid family discussions as best as he can. One night, he goes out onto the balcony to get some fresh air and sees Sogo standing outside his house. The moment Sogo sees Erida, he tries to run, but Erida stops him and asks, "Who are you? And what are you doing here?" Sogo responds, "I know why you're treating me like this. It must be because you heard me speaking badly about you with those bullies. But, buddy, I had no other choice because they would treat me just as badly as you if I didn't go along with them." At that moment, Sogo starts to cry and says, "But still, it's my fault because I'm weak and didn't value our friendship." Erida, confused, doesn't understand what's going on, as all of Sogo's words seem to be directed at the wrong person. However, Erida ends up comforting him and says, "It's alright, buddy, I'm not mad at you, but I just want to ask one thing. Do you know where Shadow is? I want to talk to him." Now we shift to Shadow, who is feeling desperate and doesn't want to talk to anyone. Even when his father tries to speak with him, he says, "Leave me alone, father, I don't want to hear you." His father finally slaps him and says, "Get out of my sight. It's because of your attitude that your mother left you, and now you have nothing left." A man, feeling disturbed, eventually leaves home. Meanwhile, our hero is walking through the forest with his group until Kinji reminds him to be cautious, as they have entered the territory of one of the 12 kings, known as Yuri, the Emperor of Water. Erida thanks him for the information and then asks Kinji about the other kings and their powers. Kenji replies, "Remember, I am actually your enemy and am only interested in your weapon." But as an overview, the 12 kings are not closely connected to each other and only gather at certain times. There are 6 individuals who are entirely separate from the kings, called the 6 warriors. They always wear masks, and no one knows their identities. In the middle of Kenji's conversation, we switch to the 6 warriors. They are aware of and monitoring everything happening around them. Currently, they are targeting our hero because he possesses a valuable weapon that should not fall into the hands of an ordinary person. They head to Kenji Forest, the same place where our hero once experienced a body-switching process. This group of 6 warriors intends to replace one of them with someone who harbors deep hatred so that he can become their successor. One of them removes his mask and prepares for the switching process. Back in the city, we see Shadow strolling until he overhears his school friends talking badly about him since he was beaten up by Erida. Enraged, Shadow prepares to fight them all, but Erida appears and stops them, saying that it's unfair for 4 people to gang up on one and offering to help Shadow. The 4 kids leave, but Shadow is angry at Erida, accusing him of trying to make him look foolish. Erida, confused, feels that Shadow is jealous of him. Before Shadow can continue his outburst, suddenly arrives and slaps him, reminding him that he made his family worry by running away from home. Feeling guilty, Erida apologizes, while Shadow walks away, sinking into feelings of resentment and hatred. He starts to see the world in darkness, with Erida as the source of his bitterness. At that moment, Shadow's hatred becomes so intense it could destroy everything. One of the 6 warriors begins transferring his body to Shadow's, but first transfers memories of Erida into Shadow's mind. Shadow finds himself in Kenji Forest, laughing hysterically and saying, "Erida, I knew something strange was going on with you lately." The 6 warriors welcome Shadow, saying that he is the one chosen to complete their group and that they will fulfill his every desire. Shadow has only one wish, to take down Erida. The 6 warriors give him an ancient weapon called Barchi, the weapon of death. The catch is that this weapon will kill anyone unable to wield it. Shadow doesn't care and tries to use it immediately, proving that he is stronger than the weapon. In the midst of Arata's efforts to master a lethal weapon, he is walking with his team when suddenly someone named Shadow appears before them. Only Erida recognizes him, and he looks very shocked to see Shadow there. Erida asks, "What brings you here?" Shadow replies playfully, "Instead of hugging me, you ask that?" Then Shadow tries out his weapon on Erida, but Erida deflects the attack. Arata's friends, confused, ask who Shadow is. Erida, visibly shaken, can't answer them and only speaks with Shadow, saying, "Explain to me, how did you come to this world?" Shadow responds, "I should be the one asking why you left me before. I've always felt like something was missing in my life, like a shoe lost from the world." At that moment, Erida can't hold back his emotions, and his hatred for Shadow begins to swell. He says, "You'll never understand the suffering I had to endure." Erida almost loses control and starts transforming into a demon. Before he completely loses himself, Shoto steps in, hugging him and trying to calm him, saying that Erida has never turned evil. This brings Erida back to normal. Before Shadow attacks again, the team advises Erida to retreat because he won't be able to fight Shadow without fully activating his weapon's power. Erida withdraws, still shaken by Shadow's appearance. At that moment, Arata's weapon falls from his hand, and Kenji seizes the opportunity, stealing it and running away. Erida quickly gives chase, but then stops to speak with Shoto in a quieter place. Shoto asked Erida, "What did you mean when you said that child came from your world? Are you really not the person I know?" Erida fell silent for a moment, then replied, "Yes, I am not that person. I know you see me as your childhood friend who grew up with you, but I am someone else. I switched places with the Erida you know, and I'm sorry I didn't try to explain this to you sooner. Oh, and to reassure you, the Erida you know is still alive in my world." Shoto then said, "All right, we can let this matter go for now. But why did you almost turn into a demon? Does that person mean that much to you?" Erida explained that he and his friends went through various hardships every day, but he never had the courage to fight back or stand up for himself. As a result, he lived in constant fear. After his conversation with Shoto, Erida walked alone. Meanwhile, Kenji finally encountered Erida and was about to return his weapon. Kenji said, "Look at yourself, like someone who's lost everything. Don't you want to take your weapon back?" But Erida only looked at him in silence until Kenji pressed him. "Why did your courage disappear just because that person appeared? Aren't you supposed to be the one to change the world?" Erida then snapped out of his confusion, realizing the great responsibility he bore and the trust of those who saw him as the leader who would change the world. He sensed something wasn't right, and this was happening right before us. In the middle of Kenji's talk with our hero, Kenji asked him, "If you meet that Shadow again, how will you face him?" Our hero hesitated to answer, And when Kenji saw his hesitation, he suddenly threw our hero's weapon far away and said, "If you're really up for this task and want us to trust you to change the world, get rid of your nervousness now. Find your weapon and retrieve it before sunset. If you can do that, we'll know you're worthy of this trust." Without saying much, our hero immediately started searching for his weapon until he saw a wolf carrying it in its mouth. He chased the wolf, recalling fond memories he once shared with Shadow, revealing that they were once friends with a close bond. In his heart, our hero vowed to try to redeem Shadow rather than defeat him, to free him from the darkness he was trapped in. Erida then managed to corner the wolf and retrieve his weapon. We return to Shadow, who was talking with a new attendant named Yabi, assigned by the warrior team to serve him. Yabi stood behind Shadow as he spoke angrily about Erida, saying he couldn't stand his presence. Yabi then said, "I'm not sure you truly hate him. If you really hated him, you would have fought him. In fact, you see him as greater than yourself, and that makes you jealous." Shadow felt disturbed by these words and replied, "What do you know about me to speak like that?" Then we learned that the rivalry between them began when they competed, and at the end of the race, Shadow felt that Erida deliberately slowed down to let him win. Since then, Shadow felt that Erida looked down on him. Adding to that, his mother left home at that time, and he faced various family issues, making the situation even more complex. In that moment, hatred started to grow in his heart, leading him to where he is now. We returned to Erida, who had successfully retrieved his weapon and returned to his team before sunset. At that moment, Kenji saw Erida and said, "All right, I trust you now." Then we see Erida going to meet Shota and saying to him, "I'm sorry for not being the person you expected, but I promise you that I will change this world as the princess wishes and make all of you happy." Shota felt moved and nearly cried, then said, "I believe in you, Erida. I know you'll do it." Our hero embraced Shota, and the scene was deeply touching. Finally, we see Yuri, the Water Emperor, monitoring our hero through certain butterflies. As I mentioned before, they are entering her territory, hoping to meet her or gain her alliance. But it seems Yuri won't be an easy opponent. Our team continues walking until they arrive in a city under the control of Yuri's right-hand man, a glasses-wearing man named Hiroko. As our hero was about to enter this city, they encountered a strange rule. Everyone entering must work to pay the daily tax and living expenses. The rules were quite troublesome, and our team was reluctant to follow them, until Hiroko arrived and said, "Follow me, and I'll take care of everything for you." We knew that Hiroko didn't know our heroes or who they were, yet he still assigned them to work in the town's mine. While Erida worked, he wondered to himself, "What mistake did I make to end up in this situation?" We then return to the warrior team, where one of them approaches Shadow and says, "We are currently on our way to meet someone named Akashi." The man starts showing Shadow scenes from Akashi's battles and the cruelties he committed. At that moment, Shadow looks shocked, speechless. The masked man tells Shadow that Akashi has experienced things similar to what he went through with Erida. Thus, he wants Shadow to meet Akashi and propose an alliance. Shadow jokingly replies that he will fully support the masked man. We return to our heroes and their group who are working in the mine. While they are busy, they see a young child being beaten and humiliated. Erida and Kanta defend the child, and just before a fight breaks out, Hiroko steps in and stops the commotion. Erida meets the child, whose name is Rika, and our hero asks why Rika is working in the mine. Rika replies that her parents died 2 years ago, and she has to work to support her younger sister. Many town residents share a similar fate because Emperor Yuri imposed very high taxes, forcing them into hardship. Erida tells Rika that it isn't fair and offers to take her away from the town. Hiroko overhears this but seems unfazed, as he understands the kingdom's difficult situation. Hiroko meets with Kenji, and we learn that Hiroko actually knows our heroes. However, he doesn't want to interfere because Yuri has ordered him to leave them alone. Kenji assures him that he doesn't need to worry because he wouldn't have been able to stop them anyway. Hiroko responds by saying he doesn't want to get involved in others' affairs, especially Arata's, because he is remarkable and will surprise everyone. Elsewhere, Shadow finally meets Akashi and, without hesitation, praises Akashi's fighting skills and proposes forming a team together. However, Akashi belittles Shadow, saying he doesn't need someone who can't rely on himself. Shadow then reveals that the only reason he is there is to defeat Erida, his main purpose in life now. Akashi responds by pointing a weapon at Shadow's head, telling him he won't be able to defeat Erida because he is always consumed by fear and insecurity. To that end, Akashi shoots one of Shadow's eyes, attempting to rid him of fear from within. Meanwhile, Erida and his group try to escape the town with Rika, but Hiroko appears before them and asks for Arata's help. He wants Erida to bring Yuri back to his former self, as a trauma has overtaken Yuri, and only Erida can help him. After listening to Hiroko's request, Erida agrees to help. They finally reach the palace, but before entering, they prepare themselves. We shift to Yuri's past. As a child, Yuri was very innocent, but his mother often scolded him, forcing him to live in fear. His mother wanted him to acknowledge that he was her child and to become someone she could be proud of. Yuri's father is currently imprisoned by a magical barrier created by Yuri himself. While we watch, we see that Yuri's father remains silent, not speaking. Yet Yuri still respects him and wants him to acknowledge him. We return to our hero, who suddenly finds a girl named Shudo pulled out of the water and taken to Yuri's palace. Our hero then leads his team to the royal palace. Once they arrive, they see Shudo bound by a magical spell cast by Yuri. When our hero tries to break the bond, he fails. Suddenly, Yuri appears and says to Erida, "Don't even think about breaking that barrier, as I've infused it with immense magical energy that you could never comprehend." Our hero then says, "Release Shudo and let her go free." Yuri replies, "I will only do so on one condition. You must join forces with me, and then the girl will be set free." Erida responds, "You're a coward for involving a girl and threatening me with her." Yuri counters, "I'll do whatever it takes to fulfill my mother's wishes and become the strongest person she's ever seen." Suddenly, Yuri starts attacking Erida, and we see Hiroko and all of Yuri's servants standing by, watching the battle, hoping that Erida will win. We'll leave them for now. Now we return to Shadow, whose eye was wounded by Akashi. At that time, Akashi told him that to truly find his purpose in life, he would have to lose something precious. "I'm the only one here who's lost everything beautiful in my life." Akashi then left Shadow alone, but Shadow grabbed him and said, "Do you think I'm joking? I want you to truly help me defeat Erida and gain the power I need. Even if it means taking my other eye and guaranteeing my victory, take it. I won't regret it." At that moment, Akashi was impressed with Shadow and said, "All right, I respect your courage. For that, I'll give you one of my own eyes, and it will guarantee your victory." There's a shocking scene where we see Akashi pluck out his own eye and place it in Shadow's wounded one. Currently, Akashi sits on a throne awaiting news from Shadow, who is on his way to defeat Erida. Back to Erida. We see him locked in a fierce battle with Yuri, who eventually traps our hero in a water sphere and begins to cast her strongest spell. However, before she can finish, we're all shocked as Shadow arrives, calling out to Erida, who is stuck in the ground and unsure how to escape. Erida then speaks to Yuri, saying that no one can defeat Erida except himself. Yuri then casts the same spell on our hero, and they both sink into the ground. There, Yuri begins using her abilities to make Erida feel as if he's talking to his mother, who is the most precious person to him. Yuri even makes Erita's mother ask him to join Yuri. However, Erida refuses, showing resistance, so Yuri takes him back to his childhood, perhaps thinking his mother might convince him. Yet, Erida remains steadfast in his principles, surprising Yuri, who wonders, how can he not listen to his mother? Erida then takes advantage of the moment, as if he's truly speaking to his mother, and says he must leave now to save someone very dear to him. Erida manages to use his sacred weapon to break Yuri's spell and successfully rescue Shudo. Yuri then appears and asks, "Why didn't you listen to your mother?" Erida replies, "Because my mother would never ask me to do something like that." Yuri tries to attack, but her strength has been drained, and she's unable to strike even once. A child runs toward his mother, who is surrounded by a barrier, but we are all shocked to realize that his mother is actually deceased. He had created a statue of his mother to be able to speak with her. Yuri begins reminiscing about her past with her mother, and how hard she tried to get her mother to acknowledge her as her son. However, her mother passed away before she could do so, leaving Yuri deeply disappointed. She had once hoped her mother would be proud of her before falling ill and dying. Then, Kinji notices an unopened gift and asks Yuri about it. Yuri explains that the gift was her mother's keepsake, but she hadn't opened it because she wanted to become the kind of person her mother would have wanted to see. Our hero tells her, "Open the gift. Let's see what's inside." When Yuri opens the gift, she's shocked to find a necklace with deep meaning. At that moment, the butler approaches her and says that she had misunderstood her mother. Her mother was not as strict as she thought. She was simply worried and wanted Yuri to grow up to be a responsible man, especially amidst a harsh environment. Her mother had secretly watched over her without her knowledge, just to ensure Yuri's safety. Yuri begins to cry and apologizes to her followers, feeling that she has been selfish, only thinking of herself. She looks at Erida and says, "I will work with you, hero, because I believe in you. I'm sure you are the one who can end this war." Erida then responds that, for him, bonds are the most important thing, like the bond between Yuri and her mother. However, as Erida finishes speaking, a dark shadow breaks free from Yuri's spell and sneers, saying that only he deserves attention. Erida feels affected but replies that he is different and wants to face the battle in his own way. A fierce battle then ensues between them, and Erida requests that no one interferes. Although his friends are worried, They continue to support him in facing his fears and defeating the Shadow. When the Shadow almost kills Erida, Yuri says goodbye to her friends, thanks them for everything, and decides to merge with Arata's weapon to help him defeat the Shadow. Although her friends oppose her decision, Yuri insists it would make her mother happy if she were still alive. Ultimately, Yuri unites with Erida, and at that moment, the battle in the palace reaches its climax. Yuri is shattered into pieces from an enormous explosion, and we see Erida standing face-to-face with Shadow in a scene that reminds me of the Naruto and Sasuke fight. Shadow says to our hero, "Yes, this is what I wanted. Now I truly want to feel the difference in power, and see if you become strong." Erida responds, "I never understood you, or why you resented me, though it should be me who feels that way and wants to kill you now." Shadow replies, "Just forget it, because you'll never understand me," and then begins to attack Erida. However, our hero manages to counter the attack using Yuri's power. At that moment, Shadow decides to use his Akashi Eye power. After exchanging blows and kicks, Erida chants with his sword, creating mountains everywhere. He even manages to unlock his full power, making him appear extremely majestic like an unrivaled king, though he's still wearing his employee uniform. Erida then strikes Shadow with a blow that nearly destroys him. However, Shadow is rescued by his team of warriors and taken out of the battlefield. This means that Erida has finally defeated Shadow and overcome his nightmare. Our hero is overjoyed, almost in disbelief at what just happened. We then see Erida gather his team and stand alongside Yuri's guards and servants. We're surprised when the head servant tells our hero that they all want to unite with his weapon, following Yuri's lead. Sure enough, they all merge with Erida, which significantly empowers our hero. Erida then speaks with another version of himself through their gate, checking in on each other. The second Erida says, "Hey, you look a bit different and stronger." Our hero responds, "This is just the beginning. I'll end this war and become king of the world." At that moment, we know that several kings have started to take an interest in Erida after hearing about him. Now we see Kinji, who promises himself that he will find Akashi and reclaim his weapon. When we see Akashi, we're all shocked because a girl named Amy is still alive, but she looks younger than before. Unfortunately, we don't get any explanation about this scene, but there are surely many secrets behind it. We also see Erida raising his weapon, bearing the dreams of those who believe in him on his shoulders, and vowing to conquer this world.